Okay. I just want to make sure that everything is fine and that you guys can hear me and that everything is running properly. I am going to start just now. Okay. Welcome everybody to the George Mokwena show live. It's just a show where I choose some topics and I speak about my thoughts around them, and it's separate from the normal show. The normal show is Monday to Thursday at 7 p.m, Fridays at 12:30. But I am here to just touch on a couple of topics that I have chosen out of the news that has happened, I'd say, in the past week. So let's get straight into it. Now, allegedly, it has been alleged that Kaizer Chiefs has made its decision on Coach Kevin Johnson. Coach Kevin Johnson, of course, the interim coach of Kaizer Chiefs, ever since we got rid of Fintseki, has taken over the role for quite a bit now. He's got 14 games played, 5 wins, 4 draws, and 5 losses. Rumor has it that Kaizer Chiefs and the top brass there at Kaizer Chiefs has decided that, the interim time was great, but that's all you'll be. You'll be the interim. And at the end of the season, he's going to be moving back to his role as head of youth. And I believe it was head of scouting, if I'm not mistaken. That's where he's going to be going. And that decides his future. Now, I'm not too sure about the timing of this leak of this information, because you don't want to do this at this point of the season and everything is looking bad, and also get rid of him, because how is that going to look for the next few games? Do we write them off? Do we say, you know what, guys, since he's leaving anyway, our season is done, there's nothing left to play for, let's just look forward to the next coach and coast through the next games? Is that how we're going to handle the coming games? But also, I actually, in terms of the decision itself, I like the decision. I think the decision makes sense. Now, let's start with his coaching. I've always said that one of the things that Chiefs needs as a Chiefs coach right now, where we are currently at as a team, is somebody who is a proven winner, who's done it before, who'll have respect, who'll have all of those things. I don't know if Kevin Johnson is respected as much as we need him to be respected. I don't know if he's a winner in the vein that we want winners to be at Kaizer Chiefs, or for the success that we are asking for from Kaizer Chiefs. So it only made sense for him to be holding the reins. It also makes sense for him to be taken back to his previous position. One of the things that I stay steadfast on when discussing Kaizer Chiefs is that job is far bigger than just one man or one technical team, a coach and his assistants and maybe the goalkeeper coach. It's too big for us to expect that one person to change everything. So now we have to be in a position where even in the back room, even in the management, the executive management, the management of the team, you start bringing in people that are going to be strong in those places. And while he may not be the most experienced coach in terms of winning, or somebody that I want as head coach, I think as a head of development, as a head scout, I think he could be very good in that role. And in that way, you start building the back as well. I think Chiefs has neglected the back, the managers, the heads of development, the this, the that, the that, those different positions that you hold. Abo footballing director, sporting director, I know Kaizer Junior is one of them, right? But is it really that strong in the back? So you have to start building up those positions before you can start thinking about giving the coach all the reins. Because those are the decisions, those are the people, the decision makers that make a team run. Those are 10-year contracts that aren't front-facing, that aren't down to the coach, that aren't down to all of that, that are the real future of the club. So you have to start getting in professionals into those places in order to build. Now, going forward, I don't know who they're going to bring in. I don't know who they're looking at as coach. And I think that a lot of decisions that they're going to make going forward with the rest of the first team. Now we know what the coaching does. Let's see the next part of that, right? The players. I don't think we should be even thinking about players at this point unless they already have their coach, they've sat him down, and they know what they're going to do. That would be amazing, right? But for now, let's forget about the players. What I'm excited about with Kevin Johnson is that he's known for having an eye, or one of his gifts in the PSL was having an eye, finding players, getting them ready, giving them a chance. And that is something that at Kaizer Chiefs has been lacking. And I don't think it's lacking purely because these players, purely because these players are not good enough to play in the team. I think it's lacking because they don't have structure. And having a head of development goes a long way into making sure that even when we have these players and we're creating these players and they need to break into the first team, there's a structured approach. If I were to ask you guys right now, who is the head of Chiefs' development? Who is the link between the first team and that development? Who decides how those players play and where they go and why or when they're being brought into the DDC team, being brought into the first team? It's lacking. So it's good that Kevin Johnson can step into that and maybe, at least on the youth side, add that bit of experience, that eye to guide these teams. Under his leadership, before he was a Chiefs coach, I believe, the GDL teams have done incredibly well, winning a lot of trophies last year and this year. So I think he may have had an influence on that, and him going back there full time will be a very good thing on that side. So I just wanted to start off by speaking about Coach Kevin Johnson and the news that apparently has been moved back into his former role. And again, that's a very nice thing in terms of the holes that the team has. You can't hire somebody as a scout, as a head scout, as a head of development, make him head coach and then get rid of him. There was a reason why you hired him in the first place, right? So let him go back and do that job, because getting rid of him means that you have to now replace 2, 3, 4 people. So yeah, I actually like that decision. Okay, it seems that I'm having a bit of an issue on TikTok, but it's fine. I'll carry on. Next topic up. We have a very interesting one. Okay, so everybody knows about the African Football League. The African Football League was meant to be the Super League of Africa. It was meant to be a competition where only the best of the best get to play each other. And we got our first one this season when mamelodi Sundowns managed to win the AFL, but it was a shorter one. It was 8 teams. It was your Simbas, your Petro Teluandas, your Sundowns, your Ahlys, your Wydad's, and it was very closed with the idea that this was going to be sort of a pilot, sort of the first year to get everything to get the competition off its feet, and then they come back, review and expand it going forward. Now we've gotten the news that apparently, allegedly, there are rumors that the Confed Cup, the cup that is under the Champions League within our CAF structures, has now been scrapped. And the AFL will essentially take the place of the Champions League as the premier tournament within Africa, with the Champions League then becoming secondary. If you play AFL, that's how you qualify for the Club World Cup and things like that. So that no longer falls into the Champions League, which is very interesting because it poses so many questions that we can ask about what's going to happen going forward. One of the questions that we have to ask is, will the format revert to Champions League format? Part of the wonder of the AFL was that a lot of those teams would not necessarily have to qualify to get into the AFL, right? They wouldn't have to qualify. It was the top ranked teams. So if you had points, you'd be able to be brought into the AFL. Initially, they had handpicked certain teams, and that was part of the problem with some of the criticism of the AFL, that these teams are handpicked. How do you break in? How do you play? Now, if it's the premier tournament for Africa, does that mean that you qualify by virtue of the Champions League? Which then, we qualify similar to the Champions League, where you have to win or come second within your league in order to qualify for this AFL. And what happens to the Champions League? The rumors are that they're going to expand the AFL to 24, to between 24 and 32 teams in order to make it bigger. That was the promise that was made, right? Currently, the Champions League is 16 teams that qualify for the actual competition, excluding the preliminary rounds. So that's probably going to take the format of qualifying by being number 1 or 2 to get into the AFL. But then also, what is the structure of the AFL itself going to be? Think about it, 24 teams, 32 teams, you come into that. Europe has just adopted an entirely new structure for their Champions League competition, where they're going to play a lot of it in league format, where each team is going to play 8 games in one unified table before going to a knockout type of competition. And they're probably going to adopt that. But again, this raises the questions of why did you do this and choose this competition to come into Africa? Number one, it failed in Europe. It failed in Europe because it was meant for certain big teams to capitalize on how much money they could make for themselves through TV deals, through all of that stuff. They wanted a separate place where they could maximize their own earnings outside of the leagues, because they felt as though it was unfair for them to have to share money with people who aren't pulling the same amount of eyes, the same amount of opportunities and sponsors into the competition. Right? So that was why it happened in Europe, and it failed because the rest of Europe was like, oh, but guys, you've got another opportunity to make money. You guys decide who comes in. You guys decide all this stuff. How is that fair? Right? So why would you institute that type of competition within Africa and then turn around and say, we have too many competitions right now. Therefore, because we have so many competitions, we can't, in fairness, have all of this. Is going to be too much of a strain. So why did you come up with it in the first place? And if I'm being cynical about it, really, I think that this was just a pilot for FIFA to see how this would work in Europe. I think there was no plans for the future of this tournament, and I think it was just brought in, again, as a test. It was a testing ground. Africa was used as a testing ground to see whether this concept makes sense. And they learned a few things. One of the things that was the major complaint, and one of the major things that had to be taken into account, is the schedule. Mamelodi Sundowns, to play the 8 games that they played AFL, they had to take a month off. And that meant a month of games within the PSL couldn't be played because Mamelodi Sundowns had to be away. And that means there's a backlog of fixtures, but also you'll be playing a whole bunch of games back to back, as Mamelodi Sundowns has been doing, trying to catch up. But then also, now you've got more games. What does that month look like? On top of the Champions League. Guys, one of the biggest weaknesses of African competitions when it comes to football is that they are all boys teams, they're all boys tournaments. Which means that Ahly will play AFL. Ahly will also likely be the team that is going to go into the knockouts of the Champions League. So now you've created 2 tournaments on top of each other, where it's going to be the same teams, basically, taking part in these tournaments. Right? And what does that mean for those teams? That means my schedule has to accommodate a 24-team AFL that is not going to be 8 knockout games, 4 knockout games, and then you crown the winner. It's going to actually be more games. And then you still have to play Champions League, and you still have to go back to your league. And these things pose a lot of questions. Time, fatigue, but also I need to have more players. It's just maths. If I'm playing more games, high quality games, I need to buy more high quality players. What do you do with your squad of 60? What do you do with the squad of 60 when you get knocked out of the AFL? What do you do with the squad of 60 when you can only register 25 members within the league? What do you do? When you look at the leagues themselves, how many players can you sell to the big teams in order for them to be where they are and to maintain that? And how does that hurt you? Then also, what type of opportunities exist for the other teams? Guys, it's so closed up The point system and the way that CAF had done its points and the way the Champions League is such a closed loop. Kaizer Chiefs on the FIFA Club World Cup rankings is number 12 in Africa. Number 12. That means that Kaizer Chiefs, who has not seen another CAF Champions League since the 2021 season where they got to the final, are still top 12. Still top 12. They haven't played a preliminary, they haven't played Confed, they haven't played any of those games. But they're 12. AmaZulu, who last saw it when Benny was here, are number 23 in Africa. And the points difference between a Kaizer Chiefs who have Kaizer Chiefs and Ahly is 101 points on the scale. Do you know why? It's because Ahly, it's because Wydad, it's because Sundowns, it's because Esperance, it's because those teams play are shoo-ins to play this tournament every single time. So not only do they have the advantage of playing that, you would also give them another advantage of playing in a different tournament, which is why it didn't make sense from the get-go. Like I said, I'm cynical about this. And my cynical says FIFA needed a testing ground for this concept. And it didn't work out. But now you can't throw away the African Football League name. You can't. That would be admitting defeat. So what do? You rebrand it. AFL is now the top, Champions League is now the second. We throw away the Confed. But then you caveat that by saying if you play in the AFL, you can't play in Confed. And what is that, ladies and gentlemen? It's exactly what the Champions League was. So this whole exercise was essentially not a waste of time. I don't want to call it a waste of time, but it didn't make sense from the get-go. And I feel like this is CAF admitting that it didn't work out. This is CAF admitting it didn't work out. And this model was not going to be sustainable. And it goes back to the conversation that I was having a while ago about this AFL, where I said, guys, why create a completely different tournament instead of creating tournaments that are going to foster and create more opportunities for more teams in Africa to take part? If you only ever have 16 teams in your Premier Division, if you only ever had 32 teams in your Confed, that means 48 teams will be able to take part in this thing. 48 teams. And of that 48 teams, a lot of them complain about what? We don't have enough funding to continue doing this thing. We don't. We can't afford to put our time into this. So you close the loop even more. When you look at the teams that consistently get into the knockouts of the Champions League, right, it's teams that have resources. And it's not to look down on those resources, it's not to stop them from having resources, it's not to even, get into any questions about that. Do what you need to do. But CAF, you need to make sure that if I am playing Confed and I do well, if I go into preliminaries and I do well, there has to be a sustainability that you can guarantee me when I get into the Champions League. Or else it'll be a Marumo Gallants long run in the Confed, get knocked out. Get knocked out and then get relegated in their league. It's teams having to drive 24 hours to go play preliminary games, sometimes in some cases because they can't afford flights, they can't afford any of that stuff, on their own dime, not getting anything back from the prelims. Then you get into the competition and you've got more games, more travel, with thin squads, without resources, and do you know what's going to happen? Ahly will beat you every time. Do you know what's going to happen? Wydad will beat you every single time. Do you know what's going to happen? Mamelodi Sundowns will beat you every single time and make it to the semi-finals every single time. So they need to create a floor. But now you're doing this thing that was a wonderful idea, I guess everybody was saying, in theory. But now you can't even handle this according to rumors. Again, guys, these are rumors, right? So let's see how this is going to play out. But it's reverting back to the old system. This is all this is. Reverting back to the old system after giving this thing a try. And I guess you can give them credit for trying, but what was the point? You rushed things through. You rushed leagues into having to give up time and give up matches because nothing was communicated at points. You rushed it. Now we see how much it was rushed. I don't think this grows African football. And I think going forward, the ideas that have to come in have to be sustainable. And they have to be geared towards growing football as a whole on the continent. And sometimes that doesn't mean a $1 million grant that is meant to go to all the teams in a federation, to fund a federation and all the teams under the federation, which was the promise of the AFL. I don't know, guys. I don't think they've thought a lot of these things through. And let's be honest, it's just a rebrand. This is going to be our UEFA Cup, our European Cup. That rebrand, that's what's going to happen here. And I feel that it was a waste of time. Don't even get me started about the Club World Cup, which in itself is quite problematic when you look at the structure of it and how people qualify. Even worse in Africa, because the 4 teams that are always in line to win something will always be in line to get it, will always be in line to play it. Very hard to break into that group. But anyway, we move on. News has come out of a transfer ban for Richards Bay. Richards Bay FC has been given a transfer ban after not meeting their financial obligations to one Ovela Ochieng, a Kenyan player who, very interestingly, had a similar problem just a few months before that with Imarumo Gallants. They have been banned from being able to make transfers unless they are able to pay back what is owed to the Kenyan player. It's interesting because it's now becoming a long line of teams. Royal AM was banned via the Nurkovic problem, but also Nascimento recently. Chipa United was also banned. And you can also go back to maybe a couple of years ago when Kaizer Chiefs faced a transfer ban during their CAF run because of Adriana Rimanana, a Madagascan player that they signed not so legally, or not so abiding with FIFA rules, right? And besides the ban, there's an interesting conversation that can be had here. And the interesting conversation for me is that our PSL teams contradict these rules so many times, but they are only caught out when it comes to foreign players. And I believe the rule is that with foreign players, they can go directly to FIFA with their disputes, which means that they don't have to go through any disciplinaries, or not disciplinaries, they don't have to go through any councils or committees in order for them to get to FIFA. They can go directly. And part of why that worries me is twofold. Number one, are our clubs really that naive to commit the same errors, sometimes in a row? I give you this Ovela Ochieng guy. He played for Marumo Gallants. Marumo Gallants was banned and given a transfer ban in order to pay his money. Literally, I think maybe 6 months or 7 months before Richards Bay stepped in and took him up as a free agent. Then Richards Bay now does the same exact thing a few months later. Is there nobody in the structure, in the running of the team that can make sure that these things don't happen? Or is it a case that the PSL teams have been working with such impunity when it comes to local players that the rules don't necessarily apply to them? And it's not necessarily because these dispute resolution things are not working out, but maybe it's because our players and our agents don't understand their rights. You know, they don't know their rights, as we say in South Africa. They don't know their rights when it comes to some of these disputes with these teams. I take you back to Royal AM. The lawyer or the head legal guy or the legal guy that they brought to the public when the Nurkovic issue was happening came out and he spoke about employment equity, the act, and he spoke about the Labour Act. Sorry, he spoke about the Labour Act and how the Labour Act and the conditions of employment and all of those things say that Nurkovic is in the wrong. And he turned out to be in the right. So then I look back and I go, how many players, particularly South African players, have you played that card with and got away with it? How many times have maybe our teams not paid our players when getting rid of them and hid behind those facts. And now there's a bit of an issue that now comes back to, you look at it and you go, "Hi man, was it right or wrong?" And then you question the agents of these players. I feel as though a lot of the problem with South Africa is that our agents have relationships with these clubs. And are you willing to kill the relationship you have with Club A to protect your client? When you've got 20 other clients, that Club A is a viable option for, and maybe Club A says, "No, I don't want your player because of 1, 2, and 3." And remember, these are hypotheticals. These are allegations outside of the facts of the transfer bans. So don't try to hold me to that. But these are the hypotheticals that I think happen within our league. You know, you see the way our transfers are done. You see the way players are let go. Think about Imoroka Swallows, how they let go of all their players. Now, I'm not saying the Baroka Swallows was wrong or that they were found to be guilty of anything, but the way that they let go of their players and the way we haven't heard anything from dispute resolution and the way we haven't seen anything makes me think that this might be a move that the PSL and PSL teams have done a lot and gotten away with. And that is one of the things. All of these cases with the foreign players that can go directly to FIFA, they go and they win. And they've proven to be right. How many cases of South African players who play for the same teams have you heard where they left and they won a case of wrongful dismissal or wrongful termination of a contract? That's what interests me most about this situation. Can't be that we look at these things as mistakes when every year or every couple of years we see teams doing the exact same thing. Surely, even from the point of learning from the other teams, you'd see. So it's very interesting. It also calls into question, in a related matter, it also calls to question the type of scouting and player management that these teams do. How are you bringing in these guys who maybe don't get to play, they play a game or two and then they have to leave? Nokovic went to Royal AM, didn't even play a game outside of Makufe and training, and I believe he was injured. Then they just got rid of him willy-nilly like that. Surely, man, we question the planning of these transfers, how they do these transfers, and also we question the management of these players. Over and above the legal facts that I've just pointed out now, that, you know, if you are taking them on and you are a foreigner and you can go to the highest convener of football, you'll win. That has to ring some bells. No? That has to make you a little bit nervous as to our football, right? Let's move on to the last one. Guys, you know, on this here channel, there's so many things we criticize. There's so many things we point out. There's so many things we say coaches should know. Why do you do this? Why are you not doing that? Why are you doing that? He didn't make this change. They're so poor, the players. But the things that we don't do is give flowers. Last time out, I gave flowers to mamelodi Sundowns for breaking the record that they had made of 100 points, where they'd played 40 games unbeaten in the league, winning 30 and drawing 10. Incredible achievement, to put aside tribalism and all of that. Today, I want to highlight a team that is doing incredibly well. And it seems that they've come to the decision that they're going to take their standing and this league seriously. I want to go to Stellies. I want to speak about Stellies. Guys, Stellenbosch is number 2 in the league. Stellenbosch has won the Carling knockout. Steve Barker and Stellenbosch have been some of the most stable teams when it comes to the PSL. The way they build, the way they bring in their youngsters, the way they play, the way they're consistently top 8, and the patience that they've shown in developing. The way Stellenbosch has taken on this idea of building a team is incredible. I think it was a year ago, or just about a year ago, that Stellenbosch, a statement came out, or somebody said in a press conference, that they had decided to change their model. They decided that, you know what, no longer are we going to sell players. No longer are we going to have to rebuild every year, right? And to be fair to them, it's impressive to want to do it the quote-unquote right way when you could just throw money at it, to be honest with you. Johan Rupert has a lot of money, right? And they've made some moves. And let me give you some of them. Jaden Adams, Devin Titus, and Kyle Jurgens were signed to deals 1st of December. That's 2 bona fide starters. Then you have Ikram Reyners, who was signed to a long-term contract on the 1st of February 2023, right, last year. Then you have Fawaz Bawadeen and Sage Stevens, who were just recently given long-term contracts in this team. And what that tells you is that you have 6 players, 6 starters, 6 Stellenbosch stars who have now given their futures to Stellenbosch, meaning that that team is going to be together for a while. That team is going to be together for a while. And if they're this good now, what happens when they're given the time? And this is often the question that we ask in the PSL. If SuperSport kept all their players, what would SuperSport be right now? You know, if Ajax Cape Town was not a selling team, where would Ajax Cape Town be right now? I know Cape Town Spurs, but would they have gotten relegated? Would they have needed to change things? If they took it seriously from that sense, because you can't compete with the money, or Stellenbosch could, but as a sustainable model, you can't compete with the money. So you have to compete with longevity. Steve Barker, a couple of months ago, took over his 200th game for Stellenbosch. And I remember at the time saying, you know, Steve Barker, what has he won? Why would you give him a new contract? How do we rank him? Blah, 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 blah. And he proved me wrong. He went out and he won the Carling knockout. If everything goes well, Stellenbosch will end up going to the Champions League. Imagine that. Imagine that. And you can even see it from the way that they've structured their team. We spoke about Kevin Johnson earlier. Kevin Johnson's team, Kaizer Chiefs, doesn't have an identity or a team to carry it through. Steve Barker, for those who don't know, his assistant, I believe his name is Wesley, has been with him since the Amatax days. The guy who's head of development at Stellenbosch right now, Evangelos, he was also with Barker when he was at Ducks. So this is somebody moving with their own team and building something somewhere else that has proven to be so sustainable, that has proven to show that you can do those type of things should you have the right people, to the point where the CEO of Stellenbosch wants to make him a Wenger type of figure, a Ferguson type of figure, 20, 25 years plus, holding down that team. And what I'm most proud of is, even with when they say they wanted 20, 25 years of him holding the team, now they're winning. And it's a conscious decision. And this goes out to all PSL teams. You can make the conscious decision to change. You can make the decision. You can make the decision to sign better. Not more expensive, better. You can make the decision to create a philosophy for your team. You can make the decision to not let go of your stars and build. And that if you stick with the process, you can get something out of it. You don't have to complain about Sundowns all the time. You don't have to complain about monies and all of that stuff. You can create a plan that works. And I know it's slightly different. Stellenbosch, all of their sports basically are housed in one place. They have an HPC. They have all of those type of amenities to help them out. But this Stellenbosch team was not a team that people were expecting to go and win things. People were expecting to be in the Champions League. And I know it's early. Things could change. But guys, can we give flowers where the flowers are due? It's not all teams that are doing badly. And I am making the conscious decision of also looking at those type of stories and those type of teams and giving them a little bit of shine as we go through the season. Guys, thank you so much for joining me. I see I had a little bit of a problem. If you haven't subscribed, if you haven't followed, please follow. Please also do me the favor of following the other accounts as well. It's not just this. I do have a live show where we have conversations between us 2 hours every day, Monday to Thursday from 7 p.m. And then Fridays is my member show, where if you want to interact with me so I can learn from you, and you can learn from me a lot more outside of YouTube, outside of TikTok, where there's time constraints and I have to bring in a lot of people and we can't do a lot. The WhatsApp group is available, and if you want to join it, head on over to YouTube, click on subscribe, click on join. You'll gain access to the WhatsApp group, and Friday shows are for my members. They choose the topics, they run the show. No one else can interact with the show. You can watch it, but you can't interact, and they speak outside of the 24/7 chats that we have daily. Hey, voice notes, pictures, videos, just everything going back and forth. Thank you guys so much. I'll see you guys then tonight at 7. Bye, guys.